The cold November wind rattled the schoolhouse windows so hard that Penelope Rivers thought the glass might shatter, and she pulled the thin blanket tighter around her shoulders as she sat at her desk trying to grade papers by lamplight. She had been living in the one-room schoolhouse for 3 months now, ever since arriving in Hachita, New Mexico in August of 1882, with nothing but 2 trunks and a teaching certificate from a Boston normal school. The town council had promised her lodging along with her $30 monthly salary, but when she arrived, the boarding house had burned down 2 weeks prior, and no one seemed inclined to offer a young, unmarried woman a room in their home. So the schoolhouse became her home by default. She slept on a cot behind the teacher's desk, cooked simple meals on a small cast-iron stove that barely heated the large room, and washed her clothes and herself with water hauled from the town well 2 blocks away. It was not what she had imagined when she left Massachusetts, full of romantic notions about bringing education to the frontier and starting fresh after her father's debts had destroyed any hope of a proper marriage back east. The children did not seem to notice or care about her living situation. They arrived each morning with dirt on their faces and mischief in their eyes, and she taught them reading, arithmetic, and geography with a determination that surprised even herself. But the nights were lonely and cold, and as winter approached, Penelope wondered how she would survive when the real cold arrived. The little stove could barely keep the room above freezing, and she had already developed a persistent cough that worried her. That particular Saturday morning, she was sweeping the floor when the door opened without a knock. She turned, broom in hand, to find a tall man standing in the doorway, his hat in his hands and snowflakes melting on his broad shoulders. He had dark hair that needed cutting, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and eyes the color of creek water in summer. "Madam," he said, his voice rough but not unkind. "I am Adam Vaughn. I work the cattle ranch about 5 miles north of town." Penelope straightened, suddenly conscious of her worn dress and the fact that her living quarters were visible behind her desk. "Mr. Vaughn, the children do not have school on Saturdays." "I know that, madam. I came to see you." He stepped inside and closed the door against the wind. "My nephew Tom is in your class. He is 8 years old, blonde hair, sits in the back." She nodded. "Tom is a bright boy. He has a talent for numbers. He told me you live here, in the schoolhouse." Adam's eyes moved around the room, taking in the cot, the small trunk that served as her wardrobe, the dishes stacked near the stove. His jaw tightened. "Is that true?" Pride made her lift her chin. "The town has not yet secured proper lodging for me. This arrangement is temporary." "It is November. Winter comes hard here, not like back east. We get snow that will bury this building, and that stove would not keep a dog warm when the real cold hits." He turned his hat in his hands, and she noticed how large and callous they were, working hands. "This is not right. A woman should not be living like this." "I manage quite well, thank you," Penelope said stiffly. "Was there something else you needed, Mr. Vaughn?" He looked at her for a long moment, and she felt something shift in the air between them, something she could not name. "No, madam. I just wanted to see for myself. Tom was worried about you." After he left, Penelope sat down at her desk and put her head in her hands. She had been so determined to be independent, to prove she could make her own way, but the truth was she was barely surviving. Her savings were almost gone. Her teaching salary barely covered food, and winter was coming with the inevitability of a judge's sentence. The next Monday, Adam appeared at the schoolhouse again, this time during the afternoon recess when the children were outside playing. He carried a large basket covered with a cloth. "My sister-in-law sent some things," he said, setting the basket on her desk. "Food mostly, some preserves, fresh bread, a ham." She heard about your situation. Penelope's face flushed. I cannot accept charity, Mr. Vaughn. It is not charity. It is neighborliness. Out here we look after each other or we do not survive. He met her eyes steadily. There is no shame in accepting help. She wanted to refuse, but the smell of fresh bread made her stomach clench with hunger. She had been eating mostly beans and cornmeal for weeks. Please thank your sister-in-law for me. You can thank her yourself. She wants you to come to Sunday dinner this week. He paused. If you are willing. Penelope hesitated. She had kept mostly to herself since arriving in Hachita, partly from pride and partly from the bone-deep weariness that came from trying to survive each day. But the thought of a real meal, of conversation with another woman, was too tempting to refuse. I would like that very much, she said quietly. Adam smiled then, and it transformed his serious face into something warmer, more approachable. Good. I will come by Sunday morning to drive you out to the ranch. We eat at noon. After he left, Penelope found herself thinking about him at odd moments throughout the day. There was something solid and reassuring about Adam Vaughn, something that made her feel safer than she had felt in months. She scolded herself for being foolish. He was just being kind, the way people were supposed to be kind to their neighbors. It meant nothing more than that. But Sunday morning, when he arrived with a wagon and helped her up to the seat with a gentle hand at her elbow, she felt her heart beat a little faster. He had shaved and put on a clean shirt, and he smelled like soap and leather and the cold morning air. The ride to the ranch took almost an hour. The land stretched out around them in shades of brown and gold, dotted with scrubby bushes and the occasional juniper tree. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks already white with snow. Adam pointed out landmarks as they drove, telling her about the area in his quiet, measured way. That is where the old Apache camp used to be, he said, gesturing toward a cluster of cottonwoods. They moved on about 10 years ago, headed further south. We still see them sometimes, trading in town. Good people, most of them just trying to survive like the rest of us. How long have you been in New Mexico? Penelope asked. All my life. I was born about 30 miles from here, on a smaller ranch than this one. My father died when I was 12, and I started working for other ranchers to help support my mother and sister, saved up enough to buy this land 5 years ago. He glanced at her. What brought you all the way from Massachusetts to Hachita? She looked down at her hands, folded in her lap. My father died last year. He left debts that took everything we had. My mother went to live with my brother's family in Connecticut, but there was no room for me. Teaching seemed like the best option for an unmarried woman with some education. You have no other family back there, no one you were promised to. No. The word came out sharper than she intended. There had been someone once, a merchant's son who had courted her properly, but he had disappeared the moment her father's financial ruin became public knowledge. I am alone in the world, Mr. Vaughn, which is why I must make my own way. You are not alone, he said quietly. Not anymore. The ranch house was larger than she had expected, a sturdy adobe structure with a wide porch and smoke rising from 2 chimneys. Chickens pecked in the yard, and she could see a barn and several outbuildings beyond the house. A woman came out onto the porch as they approached, wiping her hands on her apron, a small child clinging to her skirts. You must be Miss Rivers, the woman called out cheerfully. I am Sarah Vaughn, Adam's sister-in-law. Come in, come in. You must be frozen from the drive. Sarah was a plump, pretty woman with kind eyes and an easy smile. She hustled Penelope into the warm house and immediately pressed a cup of hot coffee into her hands. The kitchen smelled like roasting meat and fresh bread, and Penelope felt tears prick her eyes at the simple comfort of it. Tom has told us so much about you, Sarah said, moving between the stove and the table with practiced efficiency. "He says you are the best teacher he has ever had and that you know everything about everything." Penelope laughed. "I doubt that is true, but Tom is a wonderful student. He actually reads the assignments, which is more than I can say for some of his classmates." Another man came in from the barn, brushing hay from his clothes. He was shorter than Adam but had the same strong build and work-worn hands. "I am James Vaughn," he said, shaking her hand firmly. "Adam's older brother and this ranch's foreman, though my wife would tell you she really runs the place." "Someone has to keep you organized," Sarah said, swatting him affectionately with a dish towel. The meal was wonderful, the best Penelope had eaten in months. There was roasted beef, potatoes, fresh bread with butter, green beans put up from the summer garden, and apple pie for dessert. The conversation flowed easily, and Penelope found herself relaxing in a way she had not since leaving Boston. Sarah asked about her teaching. James shared funny stories about ranch life, and little Emma climbed into Penelope's lap and fell asleep there, trusting as a kitten. Adam mostly listened, but she caught him watching her several times, his green eyes thoughtful and intent. When their gazes met, he did not look away, and she felt heat rise in her cheeks. After dinner, Adam offered to show her around the ranch while Sarah cleaned up. They walked through the barn, where the warm animal smell and soft sounds of horses and cattle created an atmosphere of peace. He showed her the new calves, the milk cow, the chickens roosting in their coop. "This is a good place," Penelope said softly. "You have built something real here." "We have worked hard for it," Adam agreed. "James and I together with Sarah keeping us both sane, but there is something missing." He turned to face her, and in the dim light of the barn his face was serious. "A ranch like this needs a family. James has Sarah and Emma and another baby on the way, but I have no one." Penelope's heart began to beat faster. "Mr. Vaughn, Adam, please call me Adam, Adam." His name felt strange and intimate on her tongue. "I am not sure what you are saying." "I am saying that you should not be living in that schoolhouse. I am saying that I have a house on the north section of the ranch, about a mile from here. My father built it when he first married my mother before they moved closer to town. It needs work, but it is sound. It would be yours if you wanted it." She stared at him. "I cannot possibly accept such a thing. What would people say?" "They would say I am helping a woman in need." "The house is empty and going to waste anyway. You would be doing me a favor by keeping it from falling into complete disrepair." He stepped closer, and she could feel the warmth radiating from his large frame. "Please, Penelope, let me do this. I cannot stand the thought of you freezing in that schoolhouse all winter." The use of her first name should have felt presumptuous, but instead it sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with cold. "People will talk. They will assume things. Let them talk. Anyone who knows me knows I would not dishonor a woman that way. The house is a mile from here, far enough for propriety. You can keep teaching at the school, and I will drive you to town each morning and pick you up each afternoon. In return, maybe you could help Tom with his studies in the evenings since you would be nearby." It was too much, too generous, and yet Penelope found herself desperately wanting to say yes. The thought of a real house with walls that did not shake in the wind and a stove that could actually heat a room was almost unbearably appealing. "I would pay you rent," she said finally. "From my salary. It would not be much, but I insist." Adam shook his head. "No rent. But if you want to contribute something, you could teach me to read better. I can manage basic things, but I never had much schooling and I would like to improve." "You want reading lessons?" She could not keep the surprise from her voice. "Is that so strange?" "I am 26 years old and I can barely read a newspaper. It shames me sometimes, especially around educated people like you." His honesty was disarming. "So yes, I want reading lessons, if you are willing to teach me." "I am a teacher," Penelope said softly. "Of course I am willing." They moved her things the following Saturday. It did not take long since she had so little. Adam loaded her 2 trunks, cot, and few possessions into the wagon while she did a final sweep of the schoolhouse. It felt strange to be leaving, even though she had been miserable there. This building had been her home, her refuge, the place where she had learned to survive on her own. The house Adam had promised was about a mile north of the main ranch house, nestled in a small valley with cottonwood trees on one side and a view of the mountains on the other. It was small, just 3 rooms with adobe walls and a wooden roof, but to Penelope it looked like a palace. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a large fireplace and a proper cook stove. There was a bedroom with a real bed frame, and a small additional room that Adam said had been used for storage. The furniture was simple but well made, and everything was covered in dust. "I know it needs cleaning," Adam said, looking around with a critical eye. "Sarah wanted to come help, but Emma has been sick, so she asked me to tell you she will come visit next week." "It is perfect," Penelope said, and meant it. "Thank you, Adam. You cannot know what this means to me." He set down her trunks in the bedroom. "There is a well just outside, and the privy is behind the house. Firewood is stacked on the back porch. I will bring more supplies tomorrow, food and such, and I will come by each morning at 7 to take you into town for school. You do not have to do that. It is too much trouble." "It is on my way. I have business in town most days anyway." He hesitated at the door. "You have everything you need for tonight," she nodded. "More than I have had in months. Thank you, Adam, truly." After he left, Penelope spent the rest of the day cleaning and organizing. She scrubbed the floors, beat the dust from the mattress, washed the windows, and arranged her few belongings in the bedroom. As the sun set, she built a fire in the big fireplace and made herself a simple supper of beans and cornbread. Then she sat in the single rocking chair and looked around her new home, feeling something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. It was hope. True to his word, Adam arrived at 7 the next morning to drive her into town. The routine quickly became familiar. Each morning he would arrive with his wagon, often bringing fresh eggs or milk or bread from Sarah. They would drive into Hachita together, talking easily about everything and nothing. He told her about the ranch, about his childhood, about his dreams of building the finest cattle operation in southern New Mexico. She told him about Boston, about her love of books, about her students and their progress. 3 evenings a week, after he brought her home from school, he would stay for reading lessons. They would sit at the small table, their heads bent over books she had borrowed from the school, and she would patiently help him work through the words. He was a quick learner, though he struggled with some of the more complex passages. "I feel like a child," he said one evening in frustration, after stumbling over the same paragraph 3 times. "You are not a child. You are a man who is brave enough to admit he wants to improve himself. That takes more courage than most people have." She reached over and touched his hand gently. "You are doing very well, Adam. You have already improved so much since we started." He turned his hand over so their palms met, his rough calluses against her soft skin. "You are a good teacher, Penelope." The contact sent electricity through her arm. They had been careful to maintain propriety, never touching except for the necessary moments when he helped her up and down from the wagon. But this felt different, intentional. When she looked up, his eyes were on her face, intense and searching. "Adam," she whispered, but she did not pull her hand away. "I need to tell you something," he said. "I did not bring you here just to keep you from freezing in that schoolhouse. I mean, that was part of it, but not all of it." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "What do you mean?" I mean that from the moment I saw you standing there with that broom, trying so hard to be brave and independent, I felt something I have never felt before. And these weeks of seeing you every day, talking with you, learning from you, it has only gotten stronger." He tightened his grip on her hand. "I am falling in love with you, Penelope. I know it is too soon to say such things, and I do not want to frighten you away, but I cannot keep pretending this is just neighborly kindness." Penelope felt tears spring to her eyes. "You are not frightening me. I feel it too. I have been trying not to, because it seems so impossible, so fast. But when you smile at me when we talk during those morning drives, when you sit here struggling through these reading lessons with such determination, I feel my heart opening to you in ways I never expected." He stood, pulling her gently to her feet, and cupped her face in his large hands. "May I kiss you?" "Yes," she breathed, and then his lips were on hers, warm and gentle and perfect. That first kiss led to many more over the following weeks. They were careful, mindful of propriety and Penelope's reputation, but they stopped pretending their relationship was anything other than what it was, a courtship. Adam started staying for supper after the reading lessons, and Penelope found herself cooking more elaborate meals, wanting to please him. They would sit by the fire afterward, talking until late, and when he finally left each night, he would kiss her at the door with increasing passion. "I want to marry you," he said one night in early December, as they sat together on the small sofa he had brought from the main ranch house. "I know we have not been courting long, but I am certain you are what has been missing from my life, Penelope. You make everything brighter and better just by being in the world." She leaned against his shoulder, breathing in his familiar scent. "I want that too, but I worry about my teaching. The school board may not want a married woman as their teacher. Then we will find another way for you to teach. You could tutor children privately or teach at a different school. I have some money saved. You would not have to stop doing what you love just because you married me." He tilted her face up to look at him. "I would never ask you to give up something so important to you." "You are too good to me," she whispered. "I am selfish. I want you with me always in every way. I want to wake up with you beside me and fall asleep holding you. I want to build a life with you, have children with you, grow old with you." He kissed her deeply. "Say yes, Penelope. Please say yes." "Yes," she said against his lips. "Yes, I will marry you." They were married 3 days before Christmas in a simple ceremony at the small church in Hachita. Sarah helped Penelope sew a new dress from beautiful cream-colored fabric that Adam insisted on buying, and James stood up as his brother's best man. Tom was so excited he could barely stand still during the ceremony, and little Emma scattered dried flower petals down the aisle with serious concentration. The whole town seemed to turn out for the wedding. Penelope's students presented her with a handmade quilt, each square embroidered with their names, and several of the mothers brought food for the reception afterward. Even the town council members, who had been so unhelpful when she first arrived, congratulated her warmly and promised to find a replacement teacher by January. "Though you will be sorely missed," the council president said. "The children have never learned so much in one term." Adam had moved his things into the little house during the week before the wedding, and when they arrived home as husband and wife, he carried her over the threshold with a grin. "Welcome home, Mrs. Vaughn," he said, setting her down gently. "It feels strange to be called that," Penelope admitted. "But wonderful, too." He kissed her, and the kiss deepened in a way they had not allowed themselves before. When he picked her up again and carried her to the bedroom, she went willingly, her heart full of love and anticipation. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, Adam's gentle strength and patience making Penelope feel cherished and safe. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the bed, and she traced her fingers over his chest, marveling at how her life had changed in just a few months. "I love you," she whispered. "I never thought I could be this happy." "This is just the beginning," he promised. "We have our whole lives ahead of us." Winter came hard that year, just as Adam had predicted. Snow piled high around the little house, and the wind howled through the valley with fierce determination. But inside, the house was warm and filled with love. Adam and James worked the ranch even in the worst weather, tending to the cattle and making sure the animals survived the harsh conditions. Penelope helped Sarah with preserving food, sewing, and watching Emma when needed. She also continued teaching, though not in the formal schoolhouse. Several families asked her to tutor their children privately, and she spent 3 afternoons a week working with students in their homes or, occasionally, at her own house. It was different from running a full classroom, but she found she enjoyed the individual attention she could give each child. In the evenings, she and Adam would read together, his skills improving dramatically with constant practice. They read newspapers, dime novels, and even some of the classic literature Penelope had brought from Boston. Adam was particularly fond of adventure stories, and she loved watching his face light up as he worked through the exciting passages. "Listen to this," he said one night, reading from a book about mountain men. The grizzly bear reared up on its hind legs, towering over the trapper like a giant from ancient mythology. Its roar shook the very trees, but Jacob held his ground, knife in hand, knowing that to run meant certain death. He looked up at her with pride. "I read that whole paragraph without stopping." "You did perfectly," Penelope said warmly. "Your reading has improved so much, Adam. You should be proud of yourself." "I am proud that you are my wife," he said, pulling her into his lap. "Everything good in my life comes from you." They made love often during those winter months, learning each other's bodies and desires with growing confidence and joy. Penelope had been nervous at first, her limited knowledge coming only from whispered conversations among married women back east. But Adam's patience and obvious love for her made everything feel natural and right. By January, she realized her monthly courses had not come. She waited another week before saying anything, not wanting to build up false hope, but when February arrived with still no sign, she knew. "Adam," she said one morning as he was preparing to head out to check on the cattle, "I think I am with child." He froze, his coat half on, and turned to stare at her. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be without seeing a doctor. I have all the signs my mother described. The tiredness, the queasiness in the mornings, and I am 2 months late with my courses." He crossed the room in 3 long strides and swept her up in his arms, spinning her around until she laughed. "A baby! We are going to have a baby. Be careful," she said, though she was laughing too. "I am supposed to avoid too much excitement and exertion." He set her down gently, immediately concerned. "Should you be resting? Should I get the doctor? What do you need?" "I need my husband to stop worrying quite so much," she said, touching his face tenderly. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I am healthy and strong, and Sarah has already promised to help me when the time comes." But he did worry, constantly. He became even more protective than before, refusing to let her lift anything heavy or work too hard. He drove her to her tutoring appointments and picked her up, waiting patiently even when the lessons ran long. At night, he would place his hand on her still flat belly and talk about the future, about teaching their child to ride and raid and love this harsh, beautiful land. "If it is a boy, I want to name him after my father," Adam said one night. "Andrew Vaughn. If it is a girl, you should choose." "Patricia," Penelope said immediately. "After my mother. She would have loved to see her grandchild." As winter softened into early spring, Adam became preoccupied with a new project. He would disappear for hours at a time, taking James with him, and come home exhausted and covered in dust. When Penelope asked what he was doing, he would just smile mysteriously and kiss her forehead. "You will see soon enough," he promised. Sarah knew something about it, but she refused to tell despite Penelope's best efforts to coax it out of her. "It is Adam's surprise," she said firmly. "I am not going to spoil it for him." The baby grew inside her, and Penelope's body changed to accommodate this new life. Her belly swelled, and her breasts became tender. She felt the first flutter of movement in March, like butterfly wings against her insides, and cried with the wonder of it. The sickness passed, replaced by a voracious appetite that amused Adam to no end. "We are going to need another milk cow just to keep you supplied with cream," he teased, watching her eat her third biscuit at breakfast. "I am growing a human being," she retorted. "That takes resources." "You are beautiful," he said, suddenly serious. "More beautiful every day." In late April, Adam told her to dress nicely because he wanted to take her somewhere. It was a warm spring day, the kind that made you forget how brutal winter had been, and Penelope put on her best dress, the one that still fit over her 5-month belly. He drove the wagon north, past the little house where they lived, past the main ranch house, into an area of the property she had never explored. As they crested a small hill, she gasped. Below them, in a perfect spot with views of the mountains and a cluster of trees for shade, stood a house. Not a little adobe structure like the one they lived in, but a real house, built from wood with a covered porch and glass windows that sparkled in the sunshine. "What is this?" she whispered. "It is our house," Adam said. "I have been building it since January with James's help. It is not quite finished inside yet, but I wanted you to see it." She stared at the house, tears streaming down her face. "You built this for us, for our family. I wanted our baby to have a real home, not just a converted storage house. I wanted you to have a house worthy of you." He helped her down from the wagon and led her toward the structure, pointing out details as they walked. "See, I put in 4 bedrooms, so we will have room for more children as they come. And there is a real kitchen with counters and cabinets that James is helping me build. The parlor has a big fireplace and space for bookcases, because I know how much you love your books." The house was beautiful, better than anything Penelope had ever hoped to have. The rooms were spacious and filled with light from the many windows. She could see evidence of Adam's careful work everywhere. The smooth floorboards, the sturdy door frames, the quality craftsmanship of every detail. "When can we move in?" she asked, running her hand along a windowsill. "Middle of May, I think. I want to make sure everything is perfect before the baby comes." He came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her, his hands resting on her swollen belly. "Do you like it? Like it? Adam, this is the most wonderful thing anyone has ever done for me. You built me a house. You took wood and nails and your own 2 hands, and you built us a home." She turned in his arms to face him. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes. I did not know a person could feel this way about another person." "I feel the same," he said, kissing her softly. "You are my everything, Penelope. You and this baby and the life we are building together." They moved into the new house on May 15th. Sarah and James helped, along with several ranch hands who seemed amused by Adam's nervousness about everything being perfect. Penelope arranged her books on the new shelves Adam had built in the parlor, hung curtains in the windows, and set up their bedroom with the beautiful new bed frame he had purchased in Las Cruces. The kitchen was her favorite room, with its large stove, deep sink with a hand pump that brought water directly into the house, and generous counter space. Sarah helped her stock the pantry with preserved foods, and the two women spent a happy afternoon organizing everything while the men worked on the final touches in the barn. Adam was building behind the house. "He is so happy," Sarah said, looking out the window at where Adam and James were hammering boards into place. "I have never seen my brother-in-law like this. You have changed him, Penelope. Before you came, he was all work and no joy. Now he smiles all the time." "He has changed me too," Penelope admitted. "I came here expecting nothing but hardship and loneliness. Instead, I found love and family and a place to belong." That night, their first in the new house, Adam carried her across the threshold for the second time in their marriage. "Welcome home, my love," he said. They christened every room that night, making love with joyful enthusiasm despite Penelope's increasingly awkward belly. Afterward, they lay in their new bed and listened to the sounds of the night outside their window. "I am the luckiest man alive," Adam said into the darkness. "I am the lucky one," Penelope corrected. "You saved me, Adam. When I was living in that freezing schoolhouse, barely surviving, you saw me and decided I was worth saving." "You saved yourself," he said. "You came all the way out here alone, took a job in a town where you knew no one and made it work despite having nothing. You are the strongest, bravest person I know. I just gave you a house. You gave me a reason to build it." The baby came in late July, after 18 hours of labor that left Penelope exhausted, and Adam nearly insane with worry. Sarah attended her, along with the local midwife, and despite his initial determination to be present, the women banished him to the parlor when his anxiety started to affect Penelope. "Go away," Penelope said through gritted teeth during a contraction. "Your pacing is making me nervous." He left reluctantly, and Penelope focused all her energy on the task at hand. The pain was worse than anything she had imagined, but Sarah's calm presence and the midwife's experienced guidance helped her through each contraction. Finally, as the sun was setting on a hot summer evening, the baby emerged with a lusty cry. "It is a boy," Sarah announced triumphantly. "A big, healthy boy." The midwife cleaned the baby and wrapped him in a soft blanket before placing him in Penelope's arms. She looked down at her son, at his red, wrinkled face and shock of dark hair, and felt her heart expand in ways she had not known were possible. "Adam," Sarah called, "come meet your son." Adam burst into the room as though he had been shot from a cannon, his face pale with worry. But when he saw Penelope sitting up in bed, alive and smiling with the baby in her arms, he stopped as though struck. "Come here," Penelope said softly. "Come meet Andrew." He approached slowly, almost reverently, and knelt beside the bed. When she placed the baby in his arms, tears streamed down his face. "He is perfect," Adam whispered. "You are both perfect. Thank you, Penelope. Thank you for this gift." Little Andrew Vaughn was indeed perfect, at least in his parents' eyes. He had Adam's dark hair and Penelope's blue eyes, and he nursed vigorously from the start. The first weeks were exhausting, filled with sleepless nights and constant feedings, but Penelope had never been happier. Adam was an attentive father, walking the floor with Andrew when he cried at night, changing his nappies without complaint, and spending every spare moment simply staring at his son with wonder. Sarah and Emma visited often, and Tom rode over regularly to see his new cousin. "He is so small," Tom said, peering at the baby with fascination. "Was I ever that small?" "Smaller, actually," Sarah said. "You were a tiny little thing when you were born. Andrew is quite large for a newborn." By September, they had settled into a comfortable routine. Penelope cared for Andrew during the day while Adam worked the ranch, and in the evenings they would sit together on the porch, watching the sunset while the baby slept in Penelope's arms. She had started tutoring again, just a few students, bringing them to the house so she could still care for Andrew. "I never want to forget this," Penelope said one evening as they sat watching the sky turn orange and pink. "How perfect everything feels right now." "We will have many more perfect moments," Adam promised. "This is just the beginning of our story." And he was right. As Andrew grew from infant to toddler, the house filled with the sounds of his laughter and early attempts at words. Adam taught him to walk by letting him hold onto his fingers and toddle across the parlor, and Penelope read to him every night before bed. By the time he was 2, he could recognize several letters and count to 10, much to his parents' pride. In the spring of 1885, Penelope discovered she was pregnant again. This time she was less frightened, knowing what to expect, though she was more tired with a rambunctious toddler to care for. Adam had expanded the ranch significantly, buying more land and cattle, and they were prospering in ways they had only dreamed of 3 years earlier. Their second child, a daughter they named Patricia Grace, arrived in January of 1886 during a rare snowstorm. She was smaller than Andrew had been, with a cap of blonde hair that surprised them both, but just as healthy. Andrew was fascinated by his baby sister, insisting on helping with everything from nappy changes to bath time. "Gentle," Penelope would remind him constantly as he tried to pat Patricia's head with his enthusiastic toddler hands. "She is still very small." Life continued in this happy rhythm for several more years. The ranch grew and prospered. Adam and James expanded their operation, hired more hands, and became known throughout southern New Mexico for their quality cattle. Penelope continued tutoring students, eventually taking over a small room in the Hachita schoolhouse, 2 mornings a week to teach advanced students who had progressed beyond the regular curriculum. In 1888, their third child was born, another boy they named Michael. And in 1890, their fourth, a daughter they called Elizabeth. The house that had seemed so spacious when they first moved in became filled with the chaos and joy of a large family. There were always children running through the rooms, always laundry to be done, always meals to be cooked and scraped knees to be kissed and bedtime stories to be read. "We need to add on to the house," Adam said one evening after finally getting all 4 children settled for the night. "We are running out of space. We need to stop having babies," Penelope said with a laugh, though she did not really mean it. She loved being a mother, loved the family they had created together. "Never," Adam said, pulling her into his arms. "You are too beautiful when you are carrying our children. Besides, I like having a full house. It makes everything feel alive." In 1892, he built an addition to the house, adding 2 more bedrooms and a larger parlor. Tom, who was now 18 and working full-time on the ranch, helped with the construction. He had grown into a fine young man, and Penelope was proud of the role she had played in his education. He could read and write as well as anyone from back east, and Adam had already made him a partner in the ranch operation. "You and Miss Penelope, I mean Mrs. Vaughn, you are the reason I have any kind of future," Tom said one day as they worked on the addition. "If she had not taught me to read, I would have just been another ranch hand working for someone else's dream." "You have earned everything you have," Adam said. "Penelope gave you the tools, but you did the work." Sarah and James's family had grown too. Emma was now a lovely 12-year-old who helped her mother with the younger children, including twin boys born in 1887. The 2 families spent holidays together, and the cousins were as close as siblings. One day in the spring of 1893, Penelope stood on the porch of her house, watching her children play in the yard. Andrew was 11 now, tall and serious like his father, helping 7-year-old Patricia climb a tree while Michael and Elizabeth chased chickens around the yard. Adam was riding in from the north pasture, and she saw him wave when he spotted her. She thought back to that cold November day in 1882, when she had been living in a schoolhouse and barely surviving. She thought about the moment Adam had walked through that door, concerned for a schoolteacher he had never met, and how that moment had changed everything. The schoolteacher had been living in her classroom, and the cowboy had built her a house. But it was so much more than that. He had built her a life, a family, a future she could never have imagined. And she had given him the same in return, filling his practical, workmanlike existence with love and learning and the laughter of children. Adam dismounted and walked toward the porch, his face lighting up when he saw her. After 11 years of marriage, he still looked at her the way he had on their wedding day, with love and wonder and gratitude. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, climbing the steps and putting his arms around her from behind. "About how different my life is from what I expected," she said, leaning back against his solid warmth. "When I left Boston, I thought I was heading toward hardship and loneliness. Instead, I found everything I ever wanted. We found each other," he corrected, "and built this life together, piece by piece, just like I built this house." "Your best construction project yet," Penelope teased, gesturing at the beautiful home behind them. "No," Adam said, turning her to face him. "My best construction project is this family, this life with you. The house is just wood and nails. This love we have, these children, the years we have spent building something real and lasting, that is my masterpiece." She kissed him, there on the porch in full view of the children and anyone who might happen by. Because after 11 years of marriage, she was still as in love with this man as she had been on that first day when he walked into her life and changed everything. Andrew called out something about dinner, and Elizabeth was crying because Michael had taken her doll, and Patricia wanted help getting down from the tree. The daily chaos of family life swirled around them, demanding and wonderful and exactly what they had both wanted. "Come on," Penelope said, taking Adam's hand. "Our children need us." "Our children need their mother," Adam corrected. "I just need you." They walked into the house together, hand in hand, ready for whatever came next. Behind them, the sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, and the evening breeze carried the scent of desert flowers and the promise of rain. In the years that followed, their love only deepened. They weathered droughts and harsh winters, cattle rustlers and economic downturns, childhood illnesses and all the ordinary challenges of life on a New Mexico ranch. But they faced everything together, their bond strengthened by years of partnership and mutual respect. Adam's reading continued to improve until he could work through anything Penelope put in front of him. He particularly loved reading to the children, making up different voices for characters, and adding dramatic flourishes that made them giggle. On long winter evenings, the whole family would gather around the fireplace while Adam read from adventure novels or Penelope shared stories from classic literature. The ranch continued to prosper. By 1895, the Vaughn brothers owned over 1,000 acres and employed 15 ranch hands full-time. They had expanded beyond cattle to include horses, and Adam developed a reputation for breeding some of the finest working horses in the territory. The money allowed them to make improvements to both houses, to ensure their children had good educations, and to help their neighbors when times were hard. Penelope never stopped teaching. She tutored students throughout the area, and in 1896, when Hachita finally built a proper 2-room schoolhouse, she was asked to teach the advanced students 3 days a week. With all her children now old enough for school, she accepted gratefully. Teaching was part of who she was, and Adam never wanted her to give up something so central to her identity. "You are not just a wife and mother," he told her. "You are Penelope Rivers Vaughn, the woman who taught half this county to read, who makes children fall in love with learning, who changed my life by showing me the power of education. Never stop being that woman." In 1898, Andrew, now 16, announced that he wanted to go to college in Las Cruces to study animal husbandry. It was a bittersweet moment for Penelope, watching her firstborn prepare to leave home, but she was proud of his ambition and determination. Adam, who had never had the chance for higher education himself, made sure Andrew had everything he needed. "You take advantage of every opportunity," Adam told his son the day they loaded the wagon to take him to the train station. "Learn everything you can and then come back and make this ranch even better than it is now." "I will, Papa," Andrew promised. "I will make you proud." "You already do, son, every single day." Patricia followed in her mother's footsteps, showing an early aptitude for teaching. By age 12, she was helping Penelope with the younger students, and by 15, she was conducting her own tutoring sessions. Michael was quieter, more introspective, and showed a talent for mathematics that astonished everyone. Elizabeth was the wild one, preferring horses and outdoor adventures to books and lessons, though she could read as well as any of her siblings when she chose to. In 1900, as the new century dawned, Adam and Penelope celebrated their 18th wedding anniversary with a party attended by half of Hachita. Their house, expanded and improved over the years, was filled with friends and family. Sarah and James were there with their 6 children. Tom brought his new bride, a sweet-faced girl from Las Cruces named Helen. Andrew came home from college with stories about his classes and plans for improving the ranch's breeding program. As the party wound down and the last guests departed, Penelope and Adam stood on their porch watching the stars. She was 40 years old now, with silver threads in her dark hair and laugh lines around her eyes. He was 44, his hair graying at the temples, his face weathered by years in the sun. But when he looked at her, she still saw the same love that had been there from the beginning. 18 years, she said softly. "It seems like yesterday and forever at the same time." "I would do it all again," Adam said. "Every moment, every challenge, every joy, with you, always with you." "Do you ever regret it? Marrying the schoolteacher who was living in her classroom, taking on the responsibility of a wife and family?" He turned to face her, his expression serious. "Penelope, you were never a responsibility. You were a gift, the best gift of my life. When I saw you that day, trying so hard to survive in that cold schoolhouse, I knew I had to help you. But it was selfish, really. I had been waiting my whole life for you, I just did not know it until that moment." "You built me a house," she whispered, touching his weathered face. "You built me a life. We built it together," he corrected. "Every choice, every challenge, every beautiful moment, we built it together, and I would not change a single thing." They went inside together, to the house he had built with his own hands, filled with the evidence of their life together. Books lined the parlor shelves. Children's drawings decorated the walls. Photographs captured moments of joy and celebration. Every room held memories of laughter and love, of ordinary days and extraordinary moments, of a life well lived. In their bedroom, Adam helped her unbutton the back of her dress, his fingers still sure despite the years. They made love slowly, tenderly, with the ease of long familiarity and the passion that had never dimmed. Afterward, she lay in his arms, listening to his steady heartbeat, feeling safe and loved and profoundly grateful. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "Thank you for saving me." "Thank you for letting me," he replied. "Thank you for saying yes to that house, to me, to this life. You made me better than I ever could have been alone." The years continued to pass, each one bringing new joys and challenges. Andrew returned from college and took over much of the ranch management, implementing new breeding techniques that improved their stock significantly. He married a girl from town in 1902, and by 1904, he had made Adam and Penelope grandparents for the first time with the birth of their grandson, Adam Jr. Patricia became a teacher, just as she had always wanted, taking over the advanced classes at the Hatchita Schoolhouse when Penelope finally retired in 1903 at age 43. Michael went to college to study engineering and returned to help expand the ranch's water systems, designing and building a series of wells and irrigation channels that made the property more productive than ever. Elizabeth, true to her wild nature, married a horse trainer from Arizona and moved west, but she visited often with her growing brood of children. The house was always full of grandchildren, their laughter echoing through the rooms just as their parents' laughter had years before. In 1910, Adam and Penelope celebrated their 28th anniversary quietly, just the two of them on the porch they had sat on 1,000 times before. They were older now, moving a bit slower, but the love between them had only grown stronger with time. "You remember when we first met?" Penelope asked, her hand in his. "You walked into that schoolhouse looking so serious and concerned." "I remember thinking you were the most stubborn woman I had ever met," Adam said with a laugh. "Standing there with that broom, trying to pretend everything was fine when you were barely surviving." "And I remember thinking you were too handsome for your own good," Penelope admitted, "and far too kind to a stranger. You were never a stranger. From that first moment you felt like home." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the mountains they had watched for nearly 3 decades. The land had changed over the years. Hatchita had grown, with new buildings and businesses replacing some of the old structures. The ranch had expanded and modernized. But some things remained constant: the beauty of the desert sunset, the comfort of loving hands held tight, the knowledge that they had built something lasting and true. "I would do it all again," Penelope said, echoing his words from years before. "Every moment with you has been a gift." "We have been blessed," Adam agreed. "Not because life was easy, but because we faced it together." Inside the house, they could hear their grandchildren playing, Andrew's children and Patricia's, visiting for Sunday dinner. The sound of family, of love continuing through generations, was the sweetest music Penelope could imagine. That night, as they lay in bed, Adam pulled her close. "When I built this house," he said softly, "I thought I was building walls and floors and a roof. But really, I was building a container for our love, a place where we could grow our family and our life together. This house has held our joys and our sorrows, our children and grandchildren, all the moments that make a life worth living." "It is a good house," Penelope said. "But it was never just about the house. It was about the man who built it and the love that built us." They fell asleep in each other's arms, as they had nearly every night for 28 years. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance, and the desert breathed its ancient rhythms, and the house stood solid and strong, a testament to one man's love for one woman and the life they had built together. The years continued their steady march. By 1915, Adam and Penelope were in their late 50s and early 60s respectively, and they had 10 grandchildren with more on the way. The ranch was now run primarily by Andrew and Michael, though Adam still rode out most days to check on things and offer advice. Penelope spent her time with her grandchildren, teaching them to read and write just as she had taught their parents. In the spring of 1915, Adam decided to build one final addition to the house, a library room specifically for Penelope. It would have floor-to-ceiling shelves for her ever-growing collection of books, comfortable chairs for reading, and large windows to let in the light. "You have given me so much," he said when he showed her the plans. "A family, a purpose, a life full of meaning. I want to give you this space that is just yours, where you can read and think and be at peace." She cried when the room was finished that fall. It was perfect, exactly what she had always dreamed of but never dared to ask for. Adam had even commissioned a sign for the door, carved by a craftsman in Las Cruces, the Penelope Vaughn Memorial Library. "I am not dead yet," she protested, laughing through her tears. "It is a memorial to your love of learning," Adam explained, "and to all the lives you have changed through teaching. This county is more literate, more educated, more thoughtful because of you. That deserves to be memorialized." They hosted a dedication ceremony, inviting everyone Penelope had taught over the years. The house was packed with former students, now adults with children of their own, all eager to share stories about how Miss Rivers, later Mrs. Vaughn, had changed their lives. "She taught me that learning was not just about memorizing facts," said one man, now a successful merchant. "She taught me to think, to question, to see the world as something I could understand and even change." "She never gave up on me," said a woman who had struggled with reading. "Even when I wanted to quit, she found a way to make it make sense. Because of her, I was able to read to my own children, and they are all in school now." Story after story, person after person, all testifying to the impact Penelope had made. Adam stood beside her, his arm around her waist, his pride in her evident on his face. "This is your legacy," he whispered. "Not just our children, but all these people whose lives are better because you came to New Mexico all those years ago." That night, after everyone had left, they sat in the new library together, surrounded by books and memories. Penelope looked at her husband, still handsome despite the gray in his hair and the lines on his face, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "I came here with nothing," she said. "I was living in a schoolhouse, cold and alone and frightened, and you gave me everything." "You gave me everything," Adam countered. "Before you, I was just working, just existing. You taught me what it meant to really live, to love, to build something meaningful. Every good thing in my life flows from the day I walked into that schoolhouse and saw you standing there with your broom and your pride." "The schoolteacher was living in her classroom," Penelope said softly, "and the cowboy built her a house. And in that house," Adam continued, "we built a family, a legacy, a love that will outlast us both. Our children and grandchildren, all the students you taught, the ranch we built, the life we shared, it is all part of the house I started building that day. Not just walls and roof, but something bigger, something that matters." "It matters," Penelope agreed. "All of it matters because we did it together." They continued on, hand in hand, year after year. They celebrated their 40th anniversary in 1923, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The house, expanded and renovated over 4 decades, was now truly a family compound, with Andrew's family in the main house and Michael's family in a new structure built nearby. Adam's health began to decline in his late 60s, but he refused to slow down completely. He still rode out to check the cattle, still worked on projects around the ranch, still kissed his wife every morning and told her she was beautiful. Penelope worried about him, but she knew better than to try to make him rest when there was work to be done. In the summer of 1927, after a day spent working with a difficult horse, Adam had a heart attack. He survived, but it weakened him significantly. The doctor ordered complete rest, and for once, Adam complied. He spent his days in the library Penelope loved, reading or watching through the windows as life continued around him. "I am sorry," he said one afternoon as Penelope sat with him, reading aloud from one of his favorite adventure novels. "I wanted to give you more years." "Adam Vaughn, you have given me 45 years of the happiest life any woman could ask for. You have nothing to apologize for." She took his hand, weathered and calloused even after months of reduced work. "You built me a house, gave me a family, showed me what love really means." "That is more than enough." "It is never enough," he said. "I will love you beyond death, beyond time, beyond anything that could separate us." "And I will love you the same," she promised. He died 3 weeks later, quietly in his sleep with Penelope beside him. She woke to find him gone, his face peaceful, his hand still holding hers. The grief was overwhelming, a physical pain in her chest that made breathing difficult, but even through the sorrow she felt gratitude. They had been given more years together than many couples ever received, and they had made every day count. The funeral was attended by what seemed like half of southern New Mexico. Adam had been respected and loved, a man who treated everyone fairly and helped his neighbors without question. But Penelope knew he would not have cared about any of that. He would have cared only that his family was well, that the ranch he had built continued, and that the woman he loved knew how much she had meant to him. She continued living in the house, surrounded by children and grandchildren who made sure she was never alone. Andrew ran the ranch with the same dedication his father had shown. Patricia continued teaching, carrying on her mother's legacy. Michael expanded the water systems even further, making the ranch one of the most efficient operations in the territory, which had become a state in 1912. On quiet evenings, Penelope would sit on the porch, in the chair next to the one Adam had always occupied, and remember. She remembered that cold November day when a serious cowboy had walked into her life and changed everything. She remembered the first time he kissed her, the day they married, the births of their children, the thousands of ordinary moments that had made up their extraordinary life together. The schoolteacher had been living in her classroom, barely surviving, alone and cold and frightened of the future. The cowboy had built her a house, but more than that, he had built her a life. He had seen her when she most needed to be seen, had loved her when she most needed to be loved, had stayed by her side through decades of joy and challenge and growth. And now, even though he was gone, that love remained. It lived in the house he had built, in the children they had raised, in the grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their legacy forward. It lived in every book in her library, in every student she had taught, in every sunset she watched from the porch they had shared. The house stood solid and strong, just as it had for over 40 years. It had weathered storms and seasons, births and deaths, laughter and tears. It had held a family, nurtured a love, provided shelter from the harsh realities of life in the desert. It was more than wood and adobe and glass. It was a testament to one man's love for one woman, and to the life they had built together from nothing but determination and devotion. Penelope lived for another 8 years after Adam's death, surrounded by love and family until the very end. When she died peacefully in her sleep in 1935 at age 75, she was buried next to Adam on a hill overlooking the ranch, beneath a simple stone that read, "Here lie Adam and Penelope Vaughn, who built a life of love." The house they had shared continued to shelter their descendants for generations. Andrew's children raised their own families there, and Michael's children did the same. The library Penelope had loved became a gathering place for family, and new children learned to read surrounded by the books she had collected over a lifetime. And on quiet evenings, when the desert wind whispered through the cottonwoods and the sun painted the mountains gold, you could almost feel them there still. The schoolteacher and the cowboy together always, their love as enduring as the house he had built, as lasting as the legacy they had created, as eternal as the land itself that had brought them together and held them fast through all the years of their beautiful, ordinary, extraordinary lives together.